People-first organizations will win in the future of work.
Your only real asset is your people.
We all want purpose-driven work.
HR-led organization is the
I'm
future.
sorry, but leaders don't lead empty desks and empty shop floors.
Welcome to the People Strategy Leaders Show. I'm your host, Sri Chellappa, founder and president of Engagedly, and a serial entrepreneur in technology, films, and music. This is where we talk to people leaders, business strategists, and organizational savants about leading in the time of change. What is working, what is not working, and more importantly, what we should be thinking about. Stick around to the end of the show. We will reveal how you can be our next guest. And now, let's engage. Hello, and welcome to People Strategy Leaders Podcast. Today, it's going to be a slightly different type of podcast. We are talking to Rick DellaRatta, who's now considered one of the finest pianists and jazz musicians out there. Artists who can make a successful musical presentation to a large audience without having to abandon the true art form of jazz. Throughout his lifelong endeavor to help advance people to their highest potential, through the understanding of jazz, as well as spreading peace through his Jazz for Peace World Tour, Rick DellaRatta has made a huge difference to the world. So here is Rick DellaRatta. And Rick, are you going to play some music for us before we get going on this podcast?
I am, Sri. It's the holiday time here in New York. I'm not sure when this will actually be broadcast, but just so your listeners know, it's that holiday season. We actually have a CD called Jazz at Christmas Time. So I'm going to open with a little bit of a taste of that. Then I'm going to go into the Jazz for Peace poem so that your listeners can hear what kind of started it all. It was a poem that I wrote on 9/11. I'm just going to improvise music underneath it. Then I'm going to segue into something that we've been doing to try to promote important things like freedom of speech and journalistic integrity and protecting journalists who report news, even if it's not the most popular. And this is called Free JA. And then that's going to finish with we'll put a little, what do you call it? A candy cane on that by a little bit of a holiday selection at the end. So it's a little bit of a medley, but it's only just a few minutes long.
Okay. I'm going to...
I hear jazz for peace coming through the trees. My heart, it fills me like a celebration. I see the light and I want to follow, inspired by the past contributions of those that came before. The groundwork was to build on in the universal language that is a gift for all mankind. greatest privilege. I hear jazz, peace. Come, they told me, pa-ra-ba-bum-bum, our newborn king to see, pa-ra-ba-bum-bum, the finest gifts we bring, pa-ra-ba-bum-bum, to lay before the king. Shall I play for you, pa-rum-ba-bum-bum, me and my drum. Me and my drum. Me and my drum.
That was fantastic. Very nice. Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much for doing that. Um, yeah, that was very, very peaceful. I think I needed that myself in my busy day that I have. So thanks for playing that little piece. So Rick, do you want to talk a little bit about the organization Jazz for Peace? What do you guys do? And then we'll get into our discussion as we were talking about earlier about how nonprofits and volunteers, what can they learn from some of the things you've done for your organization?
Sure. Well, we start out really jazz and peace, or music and peace. They have so much in common. And what I learned leading up to the day of 9/11, when I wrote the poem called Jazz for Peace, which I recited in this medley, was that music can transcend all kinds of barriers that are holding us back. And what you're focused on with your audience is how to transcend those barriers. And that's what we try and do with Jazz for Peace. We use the art form of jazz, starting with the music, and that's why it was so great that you started us out with music, so you could hear yourself what we're using to reach people who we might not reach because we don't speak the same language, or because we don't we're not of the same religion or creed, or all kinds of possibilities. but we're able to transcend that with music and basically at the same time help outstanding causes through the combination of a fundraising model, which we call our empowerment tree.
Yeah, talk a little bit about your empowerment tree, because you said that is something that you help other organizations also succeed, the nonprofit organizations succeed. So I'd like to hear more about that.
Yeah, so basically everyone knows about this wonderful magical quality of music and how, you know, it brings people together, unites people in a positive way. It stimulates the intellect and all of these wonderful things. But when you combine it with this fundraising model, we can use a world-class cultural event, of which Jazz for Peace is, okay, to do a number of things that outstanding causes and nonprofits need to different degrees, but they all need the same thing. So starting with the roots of the tree, the very first thing we do, Sri, is we bring the organization together by rejuvenating their supporters. Most outstanding causes and most nonprofits, they are taxed, they're overworked. A lot of their supporters feel like, boy, I wish we weren't the only ones. I wish there would be more supporters. And I wish, you know, it seems like you're going to the same well for water all the time, you know? So the first thing we want to do is rejuvenate those supporters. And so what we do is we help them to become VIP guests of honor at this event, so that instead of them carrying, we're now presenting something for them to be honored at, to be rewarded at, to be thanked for their service, and to feel rejuvenated from the event. So that's a real important step, is bringing these people together. Now, now that we've done that, which are the core roots of the tree, okay, which basically start from a comment from the founder, which leads to a document we create about the event that the others will read and make comments, and then the supporters and volunteers and everyone will chime in. Okay, that creates those core roots. Now we want to expand those roots. So you've got a lot of outstanding causes that have friends and they have family and they have people that they go bowling with on Wednesdays. Who knows? You know, they play softball, that they've never really been able to communicate this passion they have for this outstanding cause that they're a part of. Well, now we give them a chance to share the information with those people and make them also guests of honor at this event. Come and get the red carpet treatment, come to an event, not just as a regular person, but as a VIP. Come into, you know, we have like a special VIP ceremony that they'll all come to before the event starts. It's a meet and greet. And a lot of times we have sponsors that, you know, present incredible gifts to these people, whether it be free beverages or free food or free gifts, preferred seating, all kinds of opportunities. So that brings them in a special way, in a more personal way. And now it expands their donor base. It expands their team. It creates more people, you know, that want to be a part of this organization going forward. From that, we have the roots. And as you know, once you have the roots, once you plant the roots, you can grow the tree. You can't do it without the roots, we find so many people trying to do. They are grasping for, trying to get all these things that I'm going to tell you about our branches without having the roots planted. So our basic sentence to them, our slogan is, help us plant the roots so we can grow your empowerment tree. And by the organization helping us, you know, by identifying who are these VIP guests of honor, we now have the roots planted and we can start growing. We have a confirmed event through this process. And with a confirmed event, we can now reach out to sponsors. So we'll get sponsors on board from the local level. This ingratiates them with their community far more than they had previously been. And we get sponsors from the local level. Then the next branch up is publicity and awareness. And we have a page with an interactive empowerment tree. You can click on the tree and you can click on all the little branches. When you click on local sponsors, you see one of our flyers from one of our past events, and you see the local sponsors from that event in that city. I believe it was somewhere in Arizona, but you'll see the actual flyer and you'll see the sponsors that we were able to, you know, get on board for the event. when you click on publicity awareness, you see me on national TV on that when I'm on NBC television talking about that organization, helping, hopefully thousands of people or more learn about this organization that didn't know. Some of them were down the street and they didn't know, but that's publicity and awareness. You need to be more publicized. Then we go on to other branches of the tree, which include things such as new and prestigious supporters, additional sponsors at the national level, fundraising techniques that we assist them with. And all of these things add up to helping that outstanding cause be a better funded, more prestigious, more befriended, more sponsored, et cetera, more publicized organization moving forward than ever before. And that fulfills our mission to give them a helpful step forward. So not only have people received a world-class cultural event that they had a great time at, but an outstanding cause has advanced.
Right, right. I think the one thing that I really liked about what you were talking about earlier is how that can help also recruit and get better volunteers as well, right? So you have this whole concept of how you like to get your volunteers, as a leader of this organization, you and a nonprofit, you guys don't have necessarily a lot of money to hire the most expensive people in the world. You're trying to inspire people, you're trying to get volunteers to work for your organization. Can you talk about that approach that you were talking about earlier? And then I think this whole aspect of treating them, even them as VIPs, probably encourages them to, come back next year and the year after that.
Well, it does, because, the volunteers of that organization, again, are rewarded and thanked via this event. But often the organization ends up attracting new volunteers because of the prestigious event. Volunteers will say, hey, I want to volunteer for this event. This looks exciting. This looks, fantastic. And can I bring some of my friends, to blah, blah, blah. So it inspires volunteers on that end. Okay. But then on our end, there are people that look at our mission and they, for many different, a variety of different reasons, want to volunteer with Jazz for Peace. Sometimes you have kids that will get credit in school and they just choose Jazz for Peace because they're like, wow, there's so many things they can choose, but how many of them are doing the kind of things that Jazz for Peace is doing? Some of them are musicians themselves and they want to be a part of something where music is making a difference in the world. So they'll volunteer for those reasons. And what we do is they fill out a form. It's like a WUFU form. It's like WUFU. It's like a company that has forms, and they're like kind of free forms online. And
right.
You can create forms. So we create a volunteer form, and they just sign up for it. You have places like Volunteer Match that you can list your volunteer opportunities. People can choose them, and then once they choose them, we get the form so we can look at what it is that their background is. And then what we try to do is fit something that we think will be inspirational to them based on their talent. We've just found that that's better than trying to get them to fit our specific needs if it's not something that they're really interested in, even though we need it. So I'd rather do the heavy lifting myself than have a volunteer who's not passionate, and have a volunteer who's passionate about something that we might not need as badly, but that the volunteer is gung-ho. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, it goes back to actually one of the topics that I have been very passionate about is the whole ikigai approach to managing people, which is a Japanese concept of, having a purposeful life. It's the same concept applies when you're at work too, right? And like you talked about, having that right approach of, or that approach of having a individual who's passionate about something and wants to learn and grow in that area, which matches with your needs, that's when that overlap of that Venn diagram happens. And that's the perfect match that you can get. And the more you can do that within an organization, the better outcomes you will have as an organization, the better outcomes you'll have and better fulfillment you'll have as an employee or a volunteer in that organization. So it seems to resonate to me very much because of the same approaches that we've been taking as well, or I have been taking as well. So a lot of organizations sign up volunteers because they just want volunteers to sign up in a roster, and then they have these dozens and dozens of volunteers. Half of them don't even show up. The
Right.
other half are busy because they can only do 2 hours here, 4 hours there, 1 hour there, and then they have this huge mess of scheduling and alignment. So how do you deal with what advice would you give to leaders of these nonprofits when you're looking for when they're doing volunteer matching for their organization?
Well, that's the advice I would give, because, if you have a volunteer coordinator, which we sometimes have, but again, we're not always blessed to have someone in place who's a volunteer coordinator. If you have a volunteer coordinator, that's fantastic. They can, work with the volunteers and kind of, schedule, figure them out and all that stuff. But I've just found that if you can appeal to something that someone is passionate about already, then you're off to the races, because they will enjoy what they're doing so much, and they'll just want to do it. They'll want to volunteer. It's like sometimes we'll run into somebody who, like, we don't necessarily need this, or we didn't know that we needed it, but the volunteer was so passionate about doing it that, hey, let them go to the races, let them try, and then it ends up being some wonderful addition to what we do, or supporting our message or our mission.
Excellent. Well, Rick, it's been a pleasure talking to you. I really love the concept of this empowerment tree that you talked about earlier, and then the matching of volunteers and how your organization has been helping other organizations, but more importantly, bring people together, which is more important than ever before, because even as private organizations, we work in a very global environment. Some of your team members maybe, and I had this example where I had one of my clients had a team in Russia, another team in Ukraine, who were working on in their organization. So now they wouldn't get along, so they had to figure out a way to make that work in their organization, because their organization was global, and they had these engineers in Russia and engineers in Ukraine who were trying to make it work. So hopefully we can all get along better together, and maybe organizations like yours and like my clients and can bring people together.
Absolutely. Like the one you're talking about would be great for them to review Jazz for Peace and see if we could be of assistance, because what we did that really launched us, and what you read, when you read from prestigious people like Barack Obama and others who sent us letters, was a concert at the United Nations where we brought Israeli, Palestinian, and American musicians together. And people were so surprised, and I had to tell them, no, musically, we get along just fine. It's, the governments and all that. And so I would love to work with an organization that's working with both Ukrainians and Russians, so that I could share my experience working with Israelis and Palestinians.
Yeah, that's excellent. So, Rick, thanks a lot for being on my show, and it's absolutely an honor. It's a very different show than I normally have, so it's obviously a good change of pace, especially with the holidays on the horizon. How can people reach you and learn more?
Well, one great way that I tell people to reach us is simply do something like watch your podcast or review any of the other information about Jazz for Peace, which could be at our website, jazzforpeace.org. Or, there's so much stuff. I mean, you can Google Rick DellaRatta famous quote even, and you'll see a famous quote that's on all of the websites, just information about us or our videos, and then send us an email. Our email address is info@jazzforpeace.org. And your comment, your honest comment, is literally represents like a seedling from a tree. It's like a little seedling. And if it, we hopefully we'll collect those comments. We try to collect as many as we can so that people can see these little seedlings. And if it's an outstanding cause or you're representing an outstanding cause, it could grow from there into roots and who knows, an empowerment tree that makes a profoundly positive difference on an outstanding cause.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Rick. It's been a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thanks, and likewise.
Sri Chellappa here. Thank you so much for listening to the People Strategy Leaders podcast. If you are a successful leader or a people strategist who would like to be on this program, please visit engagedly.com/People Strategy Leaders podcast. If you got something out of this interview, would you share this episode on social media? If you know someone that would be a great guest, tag them on social media to let them know about the show and include the hashtag #PeopleStrategyLeaders. I love seeing your posts and guest suggestions. We are regularly putting out new episodes and content. To make sure you don't miss any episodes, go ahead and subscribe. Your thumbs up, ratings, and reviews go a long way to help promote the show and mean a lot to me and my team. Want to know more? Follow me on LinkedIn and Twitter at Sri Chellappa. Thanks for listening. We will see you next time. And thank you to Patrick Ramsey, sound engineer at Kalinga Production Studios, for recording and mixing this show.